Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you crafting with me today. In today's video, we are going to be working on part 2 of our little spider mail no-sew accordion journal. If you haven't watched part 1, I will have it linked in the description down below. Today we're going to be focusing on building out a cover and also filling out the last few slides. If you remember, we had one slide that sort of backed onto the front cover in the sort of front half of the journal, and then we also had two slides on or two panels I should say, on the back of the journal. And to start building out the cover, what I wanted to do was basically create two small little panels using I've just got some scrap cardboard here, and cutting them down to size. I sort of decided to keep them just a little bit bigger than the pages of the journal. This will just give the closure string something to sort of wrap onto, and also tuck in all of those little edges, some of which were sort of sticking out from the pages we built out last week. If you remember, some of the bits and pieces were just sort of sticking out a little bit, so having the cover just a smidgen bigger all the way around will sort of, I think, keep everything tucked in nicely. So I'm just starting out by measuring the cardboard, trimming it down, and then adding some rounded off edges using my corner rounder. Obviously you don't have to use this type of cardboard, or feel free to use something thicker. This is just what I sort of had on hand that was sort of roughly about the same size as my little journal. And then in keeping with the theme and the materials that we used last week, if you remember, I did make mention of the fact that all of the bits and pieces that I used to make last week's journal, I sort of kept in a little basket to the side, just so that when it came back to the time of finishing off this journal, we would have all of the same materials to work with, and that's just going to help keep everything looking nice and cohesive throughout the construction of the pages. So the tissue paper that I'm laying down on the inside of the cover, as well as the scrapbook paper that I'm using for the outside of the cover, are two materials that I did use in last week's pages. So that's always a top tip. Just keep everything until you've totally finished the project. Keep everything handy. Likewise, this little scrap that I'm using to make a little closure thing is the same bit of envelope scrap that I used last week. I used the actual envelope last week, and this is a bit of scrap left over from that. Just used a little lid off a glue stick to make a circle. You of course could use a circle punch, and the two little pencils that I'm using to make some painting marks, do some mark making on there. They were the watercolor pencils that I used last week as well. So keeping everything very cohesive. Likewise, I added some faux stitching around the edges of the journal cover as well, just like we did in one of the in the little journal cards that we made last week. And the little back panel that I'm going to add to the journal cover, just to keep the closure string all in place, is again yet another piece of that same beautiful handmade envelope. And so rather than just going straight in with the paper from the envelope, I'm going to just use some more of that Band-Aid box offcut to just stabilize it, make it a little bit thicker and a little bit stronger, and that's just going to help the closure remain sort of intact over time. And likewise with the little claspy bit on the back, that's also going to be a lot stronger and a lot sturdier if we just back it with something. And of course I had the Band-Aid box handy, so that came in handy. Just use up what you've got and what you're using up on the day. And then I did some stamping. I used some text stamps, and at the moment I'm just embellishing the cover. So with some stamping, some of that same kind of, I would say it's gingham. It's kind of like, I don't know what you would call that pattern, like just a crisscross kind of pattern washi tape that we used last week as well. Again, keeping everything cohesive. And a nice little fussy cut spider for the cover. It was I was going to use something sort of more monochromatic, but the cover being so dark really needed something a bit brighter to stand out. And it did take me a couple of goes to get that closure right in the right spot there with my cuts. But you know what? That's okay, because we're just going to cover those little brad legs with some sticky tape, and we can also just cover up those little extra holes that I managed to mistakenly cut there with some sticky tape as well. That will all be covered, so that's no big deal there. And likewise on the back, just splaying those brad legs out to make them nice and finished off. And you did see me there a while ago just grab some sandpaper and use on, well, it's a sanding block actually, but it's the same thing. That's a great way of making some of your newer hardware. Even when we thrift our hardware, all of the brads and things that I use in my projects, or pretty much all of them, are things I've picked up secondhand. But even when they're like a little bit older, or you've picked them up secondhand, they still can sometimes have quite a new shiny look about them. And if you're wanting to really give them a bit more of an aged look, or even just dull them down a little bit, which is what I was trying to do here, sanding them with some sanding paper or a sanding block can actually really be a great way to just scratch them up or dull down some of that super shiny, chromy kind of looking finish that they have. So now I'm going back in and just adding with some wet glue, because we do have lots of lumps and bumps now with the brad legs and things sticking out. Wet glue is kind of going to be a nice way to keep everything flat and tucked in. And just to make sure that that was really going to stay down, I did actually take this whole project and just pop it under some heavy books, just those two end bits under some heavy books while I'm working on the next little page here, just to keep everything drying nice and flat, and make sure it does dry and stick down all the way around the perimeter of the cover there. And now it's time to have some fun with some pages. As I mentioned last week, I am trying to make each little panel have some sort of interactive piece somehow. And I did find this really cute, just to the right of frame there, this really cute little vellum little envelope. I can't remember, I think I might have got it in Happy Mail a while ago. It's such a cute one. And I thought it would be really cute to, in keeping with the mail theme and postage theme, to pop that on. And you can see at the top of frame there, this is the other half of the image that we used in one of the panels last week. So I really wanted to carry that through, again, keeping things kind of cohesive and like they all sort of make sense together. And to pop inside the little vellum envelope there, I'm going to make just a little postage stamp using a somewhat neutral photograph of a spider. And again, as I mentioned last week, obviously this video does contain images and illustrations and photos of spiders, just in case that's something that bothers you. But this is just a little photograph actually, just from a book, and I've cut it out and stuck it down onto just some scrap paper from last week that I used to practice and get some ink off my stamps on. And then the back of it is more of that beautiful handmade envelope. So again, just using up more of the materials that we've already been using throughout this journal. It's a great way to actually use up everything in one go, so you don't have too many scraps. Like, are you like me, where you'll do a project and then at the end of it you'll have a bunch of scraps, but then it's like, oh no, like I need to find a way to use up these scraps, but I don't want to just recreate the exact same project. So using up as much of your materials throughout a project is a great way to ensure you don't have quite so many scraps left over. But I guess they do always creep in, don't they? So these two little bits and pieces I'm adding to the side here are again scraps from a different project. If you've been following along with my Draw Leween, I had some scraps left over from that, but they are from the same notepad, just that cheap and cheerful notepad that we were using last week, that has some sort of like letters, as in postal letters, on it. So I wanted to, again, keeping things cohesive. I thought, well, I know they're scraps from a different project, but they are from the same notepad. So that was, again, another way to bring in some more of that, same sort of looking ephemera into the project. So laying those down, and you'll see there that I punched a hole in the back plate of this project, like the back part of the collage. And later on I realized I have actually put that on the wrong side of the project. This is the panel that sits directly behind the front cover, and I wanted that little faux leather tab to connect and sort of like go over the front cover and around onto that page. And then I sort of realized that I'd actually put the hole for that in the wrong spot. So that's all right. We do, of course, find a way to carry on and mend our happy accident. And then we're moving on to the back 2 panels. So we've actually only got 2 panels left, but of course we're going to maximize the space as much as possible and fill them up with some goodies, some more interactive goodies. And this image here of this beautiful, actually it's a very, very pretty photograph of a spider's web. I sort of wanted to be a little interactive postcard, those really kind of kitschy ones that you see, that really, fabulous vintage ones. I sort of wanted to bring that vibe into it. And so the interaction we're going to create on this page is just simply a little fold up tab. So we're going to pop this little nesting spider underneath, and when you lift it up, obviously she'll be under there. So the way we're going to do that though is just to make sure that the spider's the right way up when we lift the tab up. We're just going to make sure we trace it so that it's actually backwards and upside down. So we're going to turn it upside down and then turn it upside down again, if that makes sense. So around the wrong way and upside down to trace around it. And that should ensure that when we lift this flap up, it's actually facing the right way, because obviously everything gets mirrored when you flip it. So we're going to turn it upside down and then flip it, I guess is the best way to describe it. But you'll see what I'm talking about here as we lay it down. And then obviously I did trace it and use my knife to cut it out, but I did still need to go back in with my scissors and just trim out the edges there. It doesn't matter quite so much, if there's little tiny gaps. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for fun with this journal. This journal is all about pulling stuff out and, basically interacting with a pop-up book like you did when you were a kid. I mean, what joy, what fun. So next up, we're going to, instead of the postcard spreading across the entire 2 panels, I did actually think, well, maybe I can make it more of a fold out. I was just making this up as I went along, everyone. I'd picked out a few images and some ideas, but the foundation of, as we move through all of these little projects individually, I was sort of making them up as I went along. So forgive me, because I am going to be jumping around a little bit as things sort of jumped into my head, and as I sort of, just worked through everything one step at a time. So making sure that I didn't fold into that little tab that we've just created, folded the edges in, and that just gave us, again, some more surface to work on. Because as you remember, this was only 8 panels. So when we created this journal using our no-sew folded pages, there were only 8 panels, but we have definitely maximized that real estate by adding some flaps and some little bits and pieces where you can interact and fold things in and out. And that gives you just a little bit more surface area, even on a journal that's this small and with only 8 panels to work with. So as you can see, back with that cheap and cheerful little notepad with the writing text on it. Just, I'm sure it says absolutely nothing in reality, but that's okay. It looks pretty and it connotates some sort of letter or writing ephemera. So, and again, it's the one we've used many times, or variations on the same in the same notepad. So that again will help tie in all of those beautiful tones and the same sort of paper and look as we travel through each of the pages of the journal. And then this particular image was from a book, but I decided that I would probably need maybe two of them because I wanted to turn it into a pocket. So the way I sort of got around that was just to take a photocopy of it just on regular old copy paper, and then I took another photocopy of it. So I could have used the original, but I just took two photocopies, and that will help us to make a little pocket out of an image from a book. And, then it's on just regular old copy paper. So if you want to stamp on it, paint on it, color over it, you certainly can. So that's a top tip as well. If you need to use an image out of a book, but it's that really glossy paper and you don't want to use acrylic paint, take a photocopy and then you'll be able to play and splush around with all of your wet materials until your heart's content. And I had to go back in with my beloved scrunched up tissue paper. It's not even a Jess project if it doesn't have scrunched up tissue paper at this point. And this is the same tissue paper, that sort of off yellow, kind of custardy coloured, creamy coloured tissue paper that we were using last week. Same batch. So again, keeping that cohesiveness. And this is just to build out what was kind of just a plain page, but you did see there that the page I actually glued down was that little swatchy, painty page that we had last week. Remember while we were painting our spider puppet, and I had a little bit of paint left over, and I just sort of ran a sheet of paper over it, an extra book page over it to sort of capture and keep some of that paint swatch. I just love it. It looks so cool on the page, and again, it's gonna carry through some more of that paint and those colors that we've used throughout the journal. So catching up on myself here, I'm rambling, but you can see here is where I realized I'd actually put the hole on the wrong spot. So to cover that up and make it look a bit more intentional, just added a little eyelet there in the same sort of silver as the eyelets that are holding the string onto the little vellum envelope. And again, that'll make it look like it belongs, make it a bit more intentional. and just, we're moving on with our day. We're not letting that get in the way of finishing the project. And certainly we're not going back to do anything again. Like, this is what we're doing. We're moving on. And so keeping in moving on here, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm getting to a point where I'm sort of wanting to start sticking the pages down. I realized I sort of had been letting things dry and I had sort of pages going everywhere. So I was like, right, let's get some stuff stuck down so we know where we're at. And so I wanted to make just a little teeny tiny lift tab for our little lifty up bit on our interactive spider postcard. So again, just using some of that same paper that we've used a couple of times now in the journal to just create a little square. It was just a rectangle folded in half, which is going to obviously create a square, and then using the corner rounder to round off the corners, and all of a sudden you've got a cute little tab. Like, look at it, it's so cute, and the colors are just so pretty. Even though they're neutral, I think this journal really has come to life in terms of getting as much texture down on the pages as possible. Really then helps the neutral tones kind of become a bit more interesting, if that makes sense. I love it. I just love it. I've become quite obsessed with this little journal for something that sort of came out of me needing to quickly come up with something after having a quick break from YouTube. I've just fallen in love with it. It's one of my favorite things that I've put together this year so far. So anyway, I'm just, having a nice time here. And I did realize after I'd stuck it down that I hadn't actually put anything behind obviously there's a hole there. So I was like, oh no, here we go. So just gently lifted the image back up, one of the benefits of using wet glue is that it does stay wet just for a little bit of time, so you do have a little bit of leeway to play with there. And I just added some more from that same writing pad, something that looked a little bit like it would be at the top of a letterhead or something like that. And it was just, again, another scrappy bit that I had. So using up the scraps. Now, to frame out the postcard, I sort of thought, well, I wanted to put like, the vintage postcards, they do have a bit of a border around them, and they're always very like white and strong lines. I didn't really want to stick down little strips of paper. I sort of thought, well, I've got to have quite a few folds on this, and little tiny thin strips of paper probably weren't going to work too well. So I did have 2 matching washi tapes that are the same as the brown washi tapes that we've been using throughout the journal. And so I thought, well, again, that's going to carry through some of that same pattern, even though the colors are different. So I just really wanted to use this to create a border. Likewise with all of my stickers and washi tapes, if they have been a little bit older, or I've had them for a while, or they've been a bit like inexpensive, I just pop down a little bit of glue to make sure everything's in place and will last a little bit longer and not fall off. And then using the same but a slightly larger version of the label stamp that we used last week. And again, another scrap of that same envelope, making a little tag, and that's going to help us connotate that this is, maybe a travel postcard or something that's been sent from web to web. It makes it sound like it's online, but no, we're definitely talking about snail mail here. But definitely from one spider web to another, on holidays or vacation. I've really been deep diving on this like spider web mail theme in this, like any sort of like kitschy pun. I'm here for it. So cutting that out and getting it ready to add a cute little phrase, and you can see on the left of frame there, I am using the exact same letters that I used on the little timeline, spider web building timeline in video 1, where we did the little please forward to our new address. I'm going to use the same stickers here. Again, that's going to just help create a little bit of cohesion. Of course, you could go totally wild and use whatever you like. Just going to use a simple little wish you were here phrase just to sort of carry through that really cute travel postcard kind of vibes. And you can just imagine that she's there, she's made it to this sea change kind of web here, and she's writing a postcard, and then maybe she pops around the page and pops the postcard into one of our little post boxes that are on the back of the journal there. So I love it. I'm obsessed. I mean, I know, do the kids still say I'm obsessed? I don't know. But I am totally obsessed with this little, all these little puns and little stories, creating these little characters from these sweet little spider babies, and then adding some stamping just to sort of fill up the gap. I don't mind a little bit of negative space. We don't need everything to be fully covered. That little white gap though just did seem like it needed a bit of something just to finish it off, And then likewise, to finish off this little bit underneath, it sort of felt a little bit like it needed something. So I've just gone back in with my Uniball eye to add just some very simple spider web designs. As I'm looking back at this, I'm sort of thinking to myself, looking at the back cover there on the left of frame, do I need to add some spider webs to the back of the cover? Does this need a little bit of something? Because we don't end up decorating both flaps of the postcard fold out. So I am just kind of watching this back and thinking oh, maybe I could add a little something here and there. But that's what's beautiful about working in our journals, right? They're ever changing. They keep growing. They keep evolving, and you know, you might call it one and done, but you know, maybe you come back to it every so often and just play in them like you would any scrapbook. So you can see there, I just laid down the first layer of our spider web pocket that's going to sort of sit over the top of those two flaps, and then in our final panel, it's only going to cover one flap, not both. And then the final panel of the journal there. And I tell you, if I never fussy cut another spider, well, I'm sure it will happen, because I plan on doing Drawlaweens, you know, carrying on in the future, and there's always some sort of spidery related prompt in there. But I have cut so many spiders for this journal, and their little legs. Oh my! I'm happy because I haven't miscut any yet. Well, the journal gets finished today, so I haven't miscut any, but my goodness, it's been a mission to sit and cut out this many tiny spiders with just my little scissors and my knife. And as you can see there, like we did in last week's project, where we painted over the giant spider puppet, just to make sure the tones sort of matched with the journal a little bit more. As much as I loved this large spider being a redback, the red just sort of stuck out a little bit too much for me. So I wanted to just add some paint to the back of her to finish her off and make her look a little bit more like she belongs in this journal. And then I added just some more paint to the top of that little paint swatch at the back, and actually kind of made it look like a little bit more like a tree, which I kind of loved. Like, you know, how cute. And speaking of cute, cutting down this envelope and making it just a little bit smaller. It is a leftover envelope from just like some flat pack furniture, like had some screws in it or something. So just folding it over and then cutting along the edges, and then cutting the extra little bit off made the opening flap bigger, and the overall size of the envelope smaller. And then we're going to just use my knife to cut a little slit in the bottom, and we're going to use this little envelope as kind of a pop-up, you know, how cute, a little pop-up envelope. And I did actually manage to miscut it slightly, so just going back in with some sticky tape to fix that up. And I'm using the same moths book that I used last week to add some cute details to the journaling cards, just to make the little pop-up in the envelope be some moths. So you can imagine maybe they've, well, I mean, I guess for a spider, moths would be food. So maybe this is a cute little food parcel that's being sent in the mail to a friend. How cute. So just fussy cutting two little moths that I knew would fit inside the envelope we've just put together or shrunk down. And then we're just going to stick those on to a bit of that same that same scrapbook paper that we have been using throughout the journal. Obviously, putting the sides that we enjoy facing outwards. And I've left room, as you can see on the moth little bit there at the top of frame. I've left just a long bit at the bottom, and that will be our little pull handle that we'll be using for the pop-up. And then I've taken a second photocopy of that spider's web, and I've just grabbed a bit of my scrappy paper I've been using on this project to, you know, have as like glue and paint, you know, just a bit of scrap basically, and stuck that additional spider's web on it because this will be the front of the pocket. So even though it's not going to get a huge amount of foot traffic, I just wanted it to be a little bit stronger. So stuck that down just with some dry glue, and then while that's drying, I went back to the a little moth pop-up tab and fussy cut that out as best as possible. I just did leave a little border around the moths, and you can see I've just added a very simple pull tab at the bottom. And because the envelope itself felt a little bit too bare at the front there, And I thought it would be cute if you could just see the moths peeking out through the top. So if you had a cutter for this, or a punch, maybe you could attempt to punch this out. I just traced around a roll of sticky tape to get a nice round curve, and then just gently and carefully went in with my scissors to cut out like a rough half circle size there. And then we're just going to embellish and decorate just the front flap. Again, future me is looking back at this going, oh, I probably could have put something like a little message on the underside of the flap, like, please enjoy this food parcel, like just something cute like that. So my mind is like working overtime now going, what else can I add? But that would be something very cute, just to add like another little personalized message on the inside. And because this is an envelope, it's not just for the pull tab. It's a functional envelope, so you could definitely tuck anything else in there as well, just to sort of make it feel like a little care package. How sweet. So I'm just checking the logistics of this and making sure that it is indeed going to work and function the way that I hope it will. And then by now our spider web tuck spot has or pocket has dried, and I did measure and fold it in half based on the original one that's sitting on the page there, and I'm only gluing on the right hand side of the spider web, and then on the very top the edges that are actually spilling out over onto the left hand for little panel there, I have put my I've just put a little bit of glue tape on the top and the bottom. And what that will do is fasten everything down, but leave an opening for then a little pocket to exist. And you can then slide and tuck things in, sliding in from the left to the right. After sticking down the envelope, I did want to make sure that I put that down first before adding our spider, obviously, because she's going to overlap everything. But also we need to make sure that we don't cover up the little tab opening that we cut into the bottom of the envelope. So I sort of wanted I kind of wanted this to look quite overlapping. So she's overlapping the envelope, but then the pull tab will slightly overlap her. And then with her feet at the front, so on the left of frame there, what I did was glue them down, but then just went in gently with my knife and sliced them so that they're actually stuck. The feet that are sticking out over the spider web are actually stuck to the page, not the spider's web. So the ephemera that we tuck into that pocket will actually sit over her feet, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean in a moment after we finish making this little journal card, which is what we're going to tuck into that spider's web. And this little spider I've had since the beginning of this journal. I was determined to use it at some point. So here she is. She's getting her moment to shine. And again, with some repetition, I've just used that same stamp that I used on the front cover of the journal. And another little definition. Remember, we put a definition of spider in the little teeny tiny envelope on the other side. So we're going to just replicate that and sort of, again, provide a little bit more repetition. But to be honest, at this point, I was kind of running out of ideas of what to actually put there. Because, all of the spider books I had were quite colourful, and some of the images just didn't quite work. So I just thought, no, we're just going to keep it simple. It doesn't have to be too thematic. You just, put something down that looks cute. So this is, again, just a little tiny journal card, just something to interact with. And we're going to tuck that in, and you can see what I mean, where I've actually put adhesion on the top and the bottom of the web, and then the journal card will sit over her feet. Moving on to the front cover here, we are now almost at the end. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So using the same hole punch, and then I did sort of realize that the little fastener that's on the little tab that the faux leather tab that we're going to add needed a hole that was just a little bit larger than my hole punch. So I did just go back in with my knife and make that hole just a little bit bigger, and that enabled that to clasp and just close all the way, fasten all the way shut. And then, oh my goodness, I found in my stash this pen nib that you would use on like a fountain pen or something. What a perfect embellishment for this journal. And then I also found one of my old diary keys, like from my diaries when I was a kid. And this again sort of reminded me of like a postbox key, like if you went to your postbox and needed a key to open the postbox. Perfect, just perfect. And then my hardware, like in terms of the jump rings, felt a little bit new, but you just got to use what you've got. I do always recommend to, if you happen to have any old junky jewelry and things like that, keep it just for the jump rings, because most of the jump rings, like obviously I use these really new, bright, beautiful, shiny ones for my shop products. But for my journaling, I always feel like I need something that's a little bit older. And then I just tied these on with some... I ended up I didn't have a jump ring that was big enough to sort of hold everything onto that little faux clasp. So I just used a bit of wire that was wrapped in brown paper, like that comes with packaging. And just sort of tied them on through that loop. So that's not permanent. That could come out at any time because, obviously the clasp just opens and shuts easily. But I think it's cute. I think it works. And then just adding some cute ribbon here. I did try and iron it, and it just melted right under the iron. So obviously very synthetic. But I did love the colors of it, like sort of like a very soft kind of a greyish with some black stripe. Like it just felt really perfect for this journal. So I just sort of measured enough that I could wrap them around several times and have it stay shut. And then obviously this will just open and close very easily, and nothing is fastened down again. Like I didn't bother sticking anything down. And then in this image here, I've actually wrapped it around several times just to make those tails a little bit shorter. And you can see here too how I've attached the hardware on the front there. But look, it's so cute. Oh my gosh, so dinky. Like you can see it fits in the palm of my hand. It's such a cutie patootie. And actually for 2 journaling sessions, I'm super happy with how everything turned out. I really have enjoyed working in this journal, even though it feels like it's been quite fussy to look at, like as in, oh, this must have taken ages. Everything has been really simple. I think it really helps to create a really nice cohesive look if you keep everything that you're using close by and then repeat that and create some repetition. And I'm just going to show you here in these images what we worked on today, but I think I will do a flip through of this entire journal just as a look through. Let me know down in the comments if that's something you would like to see. In the meantime, I want to wish you a very happy crafting, and thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.